Welcome to the Edozo Property Podcast, bringing you insight and inspiration from thought leaders in commercial property and technology. We hope you enjoy the show.
My guest today is Tom Vaughan-Fowler, the head of national markets at WiredScore, which operates the first and only digital connectivity rating scheme for real estate. Prior to joining WiredScore, Tom was a partner in Knight Frank's global capital markets team, where he spent over a decade advising commercial property investors on the acquisition and disposal of their real estate portfolios. Tom is therefore exceptionally qualified to be talking to us today about the importance of digital connectivity and certification in the commercial real estate industry. Welcome, Tom.
Hi, James. Thank you very much for having me, and thanks to Edozo.
Absolutely. Tom, well, look, why don't you start off by talking to us briefly about your role at WiredScore and expand a bit on what they do.
Sure thing. I'll start with WiredScore because that's probably more relevant to more of your listeners. WiredScore is a digital connectivity rating system for real estate. So we provide ratings of a building's digital connectivity, or as we have since the early part of this year, it's smart building efficacy. The purpose of us is to sit objectively between landlord and occupier, effectively. Landlords use us to make sure that they are designing, delivering, and managing schemes that meet the digital connectivity requirements of modern occupiers, something that is becoming increasingly stringent. So I think we can all agree the idea of connectivity as a utility is only becoming more important and only will continue to do so. So from the landlord's point of view, our scoring system, our assessments, the abilities of our engineers make sure that they can build, deliver, and manage best-in-class schemes from a connectivity point of view. And what that means for the tenants is that they can go and look at a building and say, we know that this building will never let us down from a connectivity point of view because it has a WiredScore certification. So we sit objectively between the two. More often than not, we're instructed by the landlord or the developer, but the value is very much both sides of that equation. And then for me personally, my job at WiredScore, the official title, as you said, is head of national markets. But what that means is business development for everything in the UK and Ireland outside of London. So going to talk to clients, developers all around the rest of the UK and Ireland, making sure they understand what we do, the problem that we're trying to solve and how we go about solving it, and what we see the value of our products to be. And we also spend a lot of time talking to engineers, agents, property managers, etc., to make sure that they understand it and they see value in it as well, because those are the people that represent the buildings in the market. They have most of the, for want of a better word, customer-facing interaction when it comes to the properties themselves. It's really important that they understand what we're trying to achieve and hopefully see value in it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about educating the market on what it is and why it's important. But I suppose, why is digital connectivity rating or digital connectivity in general so important to the commercial real estate industry?
Yeah, I think I used the word utility earlier, and I do think of it as the fourth utility, and I think increasingly a lot of people do. There is a great stat that the average cost of an hour of downtime for a business is £269,000. So if your internet goes out, the average business is down £269,000. It's probably going to be less for a company like WiredScore because we're fewer people. It will be far more for a company like British Airways, who seem to always get it wrong for one reason or another. Regardless of the size of the business, I can guarantee that the cost of an hour of downtime will be more than a cost of a quarter of an annual quarter of rental payments. So let's say you're spending however many tens of thousands of pounds on your rent. The internet goes down for 1 hour. It's already cost you more than your rent has for that quarter. And most of the issues with internet connectivity are not because someone has driven a shopping trolley into a point of presence on the edge of town. It's because something's actually gone wrong in the building itself with its infrastructure or the way that the connectivity is managed and delivered. So what you end up with there is a situation where you've got something that matters incredibly to the tenants, but it's the landlord's responsibility. And that word responsibility can seem a bit onerous at times, I think, but it shouldn't be that. It's actually much more an opportunity for landlords to say, we are going to exceed your expectations, and we're going to use WiredScore and their services to make sure that as an occupier, you never, ever have to think about connectivity in your building. That's exactly how it should be. It should be something that works from day one. They can get online really easily and it performs flawlessly throughout their tenancy, because if it doesn't, it's going to create massive issues. I think if you think about the idea that offices, things go wrong, sinks get blocked, loos don't work, heating breaks down, people will stay in the office and put up with it. The internet goes down, people will just shut their laptops and leave and go and work somewhere else. So that is why making sure you're getting it right is so important.
And I suppose certifying and getting the rating is one thing. If you go into a building and say, well, there are a couple of things missing here to get that level, do you provide remedial steps to get there? Does that include installing certain hardware or other?
Yeah, the value add element is very much a key part of what we do. So broadly speaking, our services are split into two different systems. We do lots of work with developments, and in that scenario, we would be brought plans and schematics by the engineers, the architects, the development team, and we would compare those plans and schematics with our own scorecard. And we'd say to people, right, where this is at the moment, part of this is ticking loads of boxes on our scorecard and looking really good. There are things we think that you've missed and you should consider in the design, and that could be a new way of designing your risers. It could be further considerations for the security of the telecoms room, or it could be service-based stuff in terms of how the Wi-Fi intends to be delivered and managed. So we'd never do an assessment with someone. They'd come out with a rubbish score and we'd say, thanks very much, march off into the distance and send them an invoice. It's very much about the value adds. And that's true of the other work stream we have, which is for existing buildings. Now, if we do an existing building, there are probably there's less flexibility in terms of what you can achieve because it's already up and built. But still, we would never do our inspections, produce our audit report and shut the file. Again, it's a case of it's probably going to be more service-based rather than we're never going to suggest to a landlord you need to rip out your whole core and redo the M&E, because that's not cost-effective for an operating building. It'll be more low-hanging fruit, things that you can do on a fairly short-term basis to have a notable improvement on both the occupier experience and therefore the WiredScore certification. But let's be under no doubt about it, the most important thing is the occupier experience. We're a part of it, we audit it, but actually making sure that your tenants are happy and it's working for them is definitely the most important thing. We don't do the procurement and the installation of the hardware itself. We will rate the solution. Our engineers will spend lots of times with the clients making sure they know exactly what we're expecting and why we're suggesting it. But it's typically done by an engineering firm, a project management team to actually do those upgrades themselves.
Okay, and you've touched on the occupiers quite a bit. I suppose it impacts, well, not having a WiredScore rating must start to impact the letability or even the saleability of a building. Is that your experience?
It is, definitely. There was a study done a couple of years ago with Estates Gazette, where their data on Radius, where they took a large sample of buildings in London with WiredScore ratings and without WiredScore ratings and compared the rental performance. And they were very careful to make sure that they were comparing like for like. So if they had a 200,000 square foot brand new built tower in the city next to a tube station with a WiredScore rating, they made sure they compared it to something similar, 200,000 square foot brand new right next to a tube station without a WiredScore rating. And they did this all over London. And what the study found was that a building with a WiredScore certification can get up to, on average rather, 5% greater rents. In some of the London submarkets like South Bank and the sort of outer parts of the city, it was up at 10-15%. So there's a lot of demonstrable proof that taking this seriously does lead to returns on your rents and therefore better investment performance. And then the sales side of things is really interesting as well, because we get brought on often by people who are either about to buy a building or about to sell a building, because increasingly they see the digital element as a key part of their due diligence package. In the same way that they'd be doing title inquiries, building surveys, environmental inquiries, more of them now see we need to make sure that we're getting this right digitally so that we're not going to be faced with a huge capex bill in 2 years' time when everything breaks down. Or we're selling the building. We want the incoming purchasers or the people looking at the deal to know that we've taken it seriously and there's not going to be an issue in the future for them.
That's fascinating. So a lot of our audience are RICS accredited valuers. And does not having a WiredScore rating have an impact on the valuation, do you think? Or will it start to?
Yeah, I think that's the right. It will start to, certainly. There is nothing in the sort of valuation standards at the moment to say you must assess connectivity. But we know already that tenants, landlords, developers, purchasers care about it. So therefore, I would suggest it's already having an indirect impact on value, whether that's formally an evaluation report or not. And then we have to look at what's coming around the corner. So increasingly, I think it's going to be likely that you will start to see discounts for buildings that don't have the right equipment in them. And this dovetails really well with something I mentioned earlier on, which is SmartScore. So SmartScore is a product we launched in April of 2021 to rate the smart efficacy of buildings. And it's very much a new part of the industry. It's been a buzzword in the industry for some time, but the percentage of buildings in, let's say, the UK that are smart is certainly single figures at the moment. There will come a point, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, 7, 10 years away, where looks odd for a building not to have smart features in it. I don't have a good building app. I'm still using clunky systems to book meeting rooms or get guests into my lobby, or et cetera, et cetera. I can't manage the energy efficiency properly because I don't want to go through a spreadsheet. I don't have that digital interface. Where we are at the moment, we're seeing that those buildings are really pushing the envelope. Where we'll be in a few years' time is that the buildings that don't have it get left behind from an asset performance point of view in terms of occupancy, tenant retention, and therefore also from a valuation point of view.
Yeah, it's a really smart move. I imagine you get far more smart office buildings than you would do industrial. But so I imagine that's the thing. But all this tech that's going into buildings, you've got the engagement software. You've mentioned energy performance stuff. So does the Smart Score take that all into account and provide a certification for the degree of smartness of the building?
That's effectively exactly what it does. We're very against tech for tech's sake. We don't think that loading a building full of sensors and shiny hardware and incredible software just for the sake of it makes a smart building. The most important thing, I think, is to make sure you have a cohesive building-wide strategy for the whole building, that all of your systems in place, be they hardware or software, are working as an integrated whole, such that if a tenant comes into a previously vacant floor, they can say the base build of this building is so well designed, I can go absolutely nuts on my fit out from a smart point of view and very, very simply bolt it on to the existing building systems. And in order to make sure that we're not focused on tech for tech's sakes, you wouldn't get a better Smart Score rating because you've got more sensors for occupancy in your floor plate than a building next door. It's all about the user experience for us. So the scorecard for Smart Score is looking at how is this smart feature in this building making lives better for the people who work in the building or with the building. We're very, very focused on what is the human benefit of these smart features. And that's helpful for two reasons, I think. Firstly, because it makes it real. Smart is a fairly abstract, opaque topic. It's been around in the industry for a while, as I mentioned, but there are lots of us, myself included, who are still kind of grappling with it to make sure we know exactly what it is. If you can ground it in human experience and user benefits, it just makes it that much more tangible when you can say, oh, I get why I would do this because it makes this step of someone's working life that much easier. So that's a really, really important part of it. And secondly, I don't think we're at a stage yet where you can simply take data from buildings and say this building is smarter than another building based on the data, because it's still a nascent part of the industry. We are still at a stage where the sector is growing, it's expanding rapidly in terms of the technology offering and the delivery. There will come a point in the future where Smart Score will be done more on data delivery and how the data feedback loop is changing behavior in the buildings, be that productivity, maintenance, energy performance. That's the next step of smart buildings as I see it.
And I was reading on your website about how you are starting to work in the PRS and BTR sector as well. Could you expand on that a little bit? The tenant experience is very different. It's not a commercial occupier, but it'd be good to understand what a residential occupier would get and how it would impact that industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly is a different tenant experience. It's a more demanding one. I would say that's been the resounding feedback from our clients. So many of our clients who work with us on the office side of things are now working with us on the PRS and the build to rent sector. And some of them will be doing so exclusively. But the feedback is always, it matters more to our renters than it does to our office occupiers. And there is no doubt that what has happened in the last 2 years with COVID, working from home, lockdowns, has brought connectivity in the home and what we do into a much, much sharper focus, because almost overnight, people expected their homes to be offering so much more than they traditionally would do. There was my old firm, Knight Frank, do a buyer sentiment survey for residential buyers. And in the most recent versions, the most important thing for buyers has been quality of internet connectivity. It's above local schools, access to pubs, transport hubs. It's the most important thing now for a residential buyer. And so landlords and developers work with us to make sure that their scheme delivers that sort of quality that you get in an office experience as you would at home. And it's relatively similar to WiredScore in that the building design is really important, how the fiber's getting into the building, what the telecoms room look like and how it's distributed around the building. But it's also the service side of things. How quickly can I get online? No one wants to sit at home with a 4G dongle for 6 weeks while they can't use their Peloton or their smart TV. They expect to be able to get online day one. If they can't, they're immediately disgruntled with the scheme and they'll start looking for problems elsewhere. And again, the key difference between residential renters and commercial tenants is that they can vote with their feet. Their leases will typically be 1 year long. If something as important as connectivity isn't working for them, they're not going to stay. It's not like an office building where you may have a 5, 10, even a 15-year lease and they're tied in for a long period of time and you have the chance as a landlord to fix any problems over the course of that tenancy, you have to move really, really quickly. The best thing to do is to be proactive rather than reactive. And the service side of our residential scorecard is really important for exactly that reason.
We talked about value earlier as well, that the value in terms of the price you can achieve for a residential unit or development is going to be definitely, based on whether the connectivity is very high. And I'm sure
so I agree.
And I'm sure your ratings would play into that as well. Yeah, I would personally pay more to be in an area, especially outside London, right?
Yeah.
Where you had a guaranteed internet connection.
Yeah, well, we don't do anything without reviews now, do we? We don't book a holiday, we don't book a restaurant, we won't join a gym. Everything we do now, we rely on reviews, be it Google or, in the case of the residential market, the various authorized third-party sites that take reviews from a number of different schemes. So having that WiredScore rating behind you is that third-party verified certification of internet performance. It's not just the landlord or developer saying, oh, it's good, I promise you it's really, really good. Actually, we've taken steps to get a third party to do it for us. And then in terms of the effect on valuation, we work with a number of institutions and private equity firms now who, if they are forward funding or doing a forward commitment for a residential block, won't sign the development funding agreement unless there is a WiredScore rating in the spec. Because again, it comes back to that due diligence point I made earlier. They're going into this making sure they're covering all of their bases. If the connectivity required for a WiredScore rating is not in the development spec, they won't sign the deal, because once they've signed the deal, they have less influence over the developer to be able to say, please change the spec. If they can do it in advance and say, you need to consider this, otherwise we're not funding it, it's a much more powerful argument. And that's an increasingly common approach adopted by a number of our clients.
Yeah. Well, look, super important, as you say, in this age of work from home. So
definitely,
that sounds very exciting. And Tom, you've got an accredited professional program. So you essentially train surveyors and engineers and other people to certify buildings. Tell us a bit more about that and how how people might get into that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it grew originally in markets where we don't have WiredScore people on the ground. So we've got very good global coverage now, but there are certain European countries where we grew without having WiredScore people in an office in, let's say, Lisbon or Rome or somewhere like that. And so what we did instead was engage with the engineering community, the property management community, the telecoms community in those markets to say, we can train you as a WiredScore accredited professional. You then can go out to your clients and say, this is what WiredScore means. This is how you can go about getting a WiredScore rating. And because I've been trained, I can deliver that for you. And that's led to, it's really facilitated fantastic growth globally for us. And it's now a model that we will be repeating in the UK from, I think it's May in 2022. So we will be able to train APs, leasing agents, property managers, to become WiredScore or SmartScore certified APs in the UK and in Ireland. And then they can go out and deliver exactly that sort of service for their clients. And I think for them, it's a really fantastic opportunity to be able to demonstrate a point of difference in what is obviously a very, very crowded market. Rather than just coming to you with my traditional pitch, I've got an extra layer of value. I'm tuned into what is the sort of leading edge of real estate development in both the residential and the office sector. For WiredScore and SmartScore, I'm better equipped to add value to your business as a result. And so there's really no limit on who can be involved in that. As I said, many building engineers, developers, telecoms consultants have taken it up to date, but also we've had a number of large institutional clients who put their own staff forward because they commit numerous buildings to WiredScore and SmartScore, and they want to make sure that internally they've got the best handle on it possible. So there's various forms available on our website, and people can get in touch with us via that. They'll be immediately registered as an interested AP via our systems. And as the scheme develops and is eventually launched in May of 2022, they'll be first of the queue to make sure that they are properly equipped to be able to go out and start adding that sort of value for their clients.
And Tom, you touched on a couple of European cities there. How many markets does WiredScore work in? Is it completely global?
It's not quite completely global. So off the top of my head, the gaps would be South America and Central Asia at the moment. So we operate on the whole of continental Europe. We expanded into Central Eastern Europe and the Nordics just last month. We've just hired a few people in Singapore. So in Singapore, we will be opening an office on the ground to launch our Southeast Asian exposure. And we've been operating in Australia for a number of years as well. So it's an increasingly global global product. We are in, I believe, it's over 20 countries worldwide at the moment, nearly 200 different cities. There are 800 million square feet of offices around the world certified by WiredScore, which means there are 6 million people working in better connected environments because of their WiredScore ratings. And then the home product is growing equally quickly. In the UK, we have 35% of the market is now either either certified or going through certification. And the home product has more recently launched in Europe and the US, and we're seeing early signs of equally exponential growth, which is really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And your role obviously is to go out and find commercial investors. Are there parts of the UK that are better connected than others? I know big cities is quite obvious, but what sort of trends do you see out there in terms of connectivity and how that differs across the country?
I guess the best word to answer that is ubiquity. And by that, I mean, it's literally everywhere. There is no reason now, the way that the physical fiber network develops around the UK, for you not to have a good internet experience. There are no barriers to entry from that point of view. We're very lucky that we work on the Empire State Building, the Shard, 22 Bishopsgate, really well-known, globally recognized buildings. But we also work in much, much smaller, more dated buildings in more regional, less recognizable markets. And that's really important because every company now has a digital strategy. 5-10 years ago, it would probably have been considered the sole preserve of the likes of LinkedIn and Facebook and the big four accountancy firms. You could have 3 people in your firm or 3,000 people in your firm. You still have a digital strategy. And therefore, whatever building you're occupying should mirror that digital strategy as well. So SmartScore is a really good indication of this. When we launched SmartScore in, as I said, April of this year, originally going to talk to clients, many of them thought, I'm not sure if this is for me. This sounds like something that is for a 400,000 square foot tower in Canary Wharf. And then we launched SmartScore, and people saw the types of buildings that were going for SmartScore accreditation and realized that it was not the preserve of the monster developments in capital cities. So SmartScore and its regional growth in the UK has been really exciting, everywhere from all of the big 6 cities, but including places like Bradford, Sunderland, Dundee, less recognized, not the office locations that you would think first and foremost when looking into the regions. The appetite for connectivity is everywhere, and the ability to deliver it is everywhere as well. And
does it translate? Does the WiredScore certification translate into industrial and other asset classes as well?
The industrial sector is basically the next one on our roadmap. So we're currently in the process of designing that product at the moment, because we have had numerous inquiries from industrial landlords saying, the reliance on internet, that could be for third-party logistics, it could be for online fulfillment, or it could be for the automation of mechanization within the factories themselves, is only growing and growing. How do we make sure that our buildings are properly designed, that if we're building them speculatively, we can attract the widest group of tenants possible? So we're in the process now of working out exactly what an industrial product would look like, but it will definitely be coming in 2022. And we're very fortunate that enough of our clients have come to us and said, we want you to do this, which is exactly what happened with home. It's exactly what happened with SmartScore. And we also do the student sector as well now. Clients have said to us, it works for the office. We have similar concerns from our customers in other sectors. Can you build a product that suits those needs?
Yeah, it sounds like a really sensible trajectory. And a lot of your clients have both industrial, office and other portfolios. So
yeah,
seems
exactly.
to make sense.
It is. And I think the other thing to always be cognizant of in any sector is the impact of what we do on people's ESG strategies. And that's incredibly important. And I'm really, really pleased that it's becoming such a focused element of people's concerns. We work with a number of our clients in terms of their quarterly or annual reporting to their shareholders and their investments, where they want to be able to say, from a governance point of view, we are prudently managing our assets and therefore your investments by engaging with WiredScore and make sure that our buildings are future-proof from a design point of view. We're using WiredScore to make sure that we get the design and the management of the assets right, so that we're not going to suddenly have a huge capex problem in 2, 5 or 7 years' time. Because the tech market moves so much more quickly than the built environment. An office could last for 30, 40, 50 years. Imagine how many new iPhones will be issued in that time. The tech moves on so much more quickly, and the built environment, as we know, is illiquid. It's not necessarily particularly adaptable. So people are working with us to make sure they can future-proof their investments from that point of view, and therefore make sure they're ticking the governance box of their ESG strategies. The environmental side is obviously incredibly important. If you get connectivity wrong, you're going to be using loads of materials, loads of extra carbon when you try to have to go and refit all of these problems. That links particularly closely with SmartScore as well in terms of the energy usage. the ability to monitor performance and change behaviors to improve energy performance as well. And the social side of things is often referred to as the ESG box that is hardest to tick, but I'm really pleased to say we're doing a lot on that side as well. From the idea of digital poverty is increasingly common at the moment and was really brought into focus during the various lockdowns, where people were sent home from school. They didn't have laptops, they didn't have good connectivity, and they simply couldn't do the things they required for their educational needs. Mums and dads couldn't get food delivered on time. People couldn't log into their Zoom calls. So making sure that you have got good connectivity in your homes and your offices means that no one should have to suffer from a poorer experience wherever they are.
And Tom, so look, I'd like to ask you two personal questions. So number one, you spent over a decade in the transactional side of real estate, selling large portfolios on behalf of institutional clients and other. What's the transition been like for you, going from kind of traditional bricks and mortar into the sort of the technology space?
It's been incredibly fulfilling, I'm glad to say. I've been at WiredScore for just over a year now, and it's really surpassed my expectations. I suppose we're in a very fortunate position at WiredScore where people want to hear from us because they believe in what they do. There are thousands of investment agents across the market, many of whom are much better at their job than I ever was. So getting someone's attention was always that bit more difficult because it's hard to offer something that is a point of difference from them. So on a purely selfish point of view, it's more rewarding when you can say to someone, they may have never heard of us, but they know that the internet's important, or as is often the case, they have heard of us. So that's been absolutely fantastic. And then the other major benefit personally has been the diversity. And by that, I'm referring more to intellectual and professional diversity than social, ethnic, or religious diversity, which is also something I'm very glad to say WiredScore takes incredibly seriously. But I now work in a firm where there are so many people from different professional and educational backgrounds. The levels of expertise, the way people think about things, their approach to problem solving has been fascinating for me to see, because I had one job for 10 years that I loved very, very much, but I didn't realize until I joined WiredScore how much else was out there effectively. So that's been a really, really important part of the last year for me. Great.
And look, I can resonate with that. As you know, I also spent the best part of a decade in commercial real estate leasing and then investment sales as well. And after now 4 years with Edozo, I can happily say the same thing, right? It's nice to have a diversity of talent and use our skills to better advise the industry we used to work in.
Yeah, I totally agree. Look, the mission of WiredScore is to make the world's buildings smarter and better connected. And that's a bold mission, and it's a really, really big statement, but it doesn't feel impossible by any means. It feels like we're actually making a difference to it. And I don't want to sound too much like I'm patting ourselves on the back here, but it's a really, really important issue for a huge amount of people. And because of the quality of people we have at WiredScore and the quality of clients we have and the quality of people who back us and invest in us, we are making a really big difference. And it's fantastic to play a really small part in that.
And Tom, second personal question, and I ask this to everyone who comes on, where are you at your happiest?
Outside. It would be my gut feel answer to that. I should probably say, when looking through riser plans for a 14-story residential building, but I'm at my happiness outside. It means a lot to me to be able to get a good physical balance in life. And I don't mean, doing Ironmans or ultra marathons or anything like that. I mean purely fresh air, being in nature with friends and family. That is certainly the thing that makes me happiest in life.
Love it. Well, look, you and I aligned on that point as well. Tom, look, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Super interesting hearing about WiredScore and SmartScore. I have no doubt you guys are going to go from strength to strength. So we're going to follow your progress with great interest. So thanks so much for coming on the Edozo Property Podcast, and let's catch up again soon.
Definitely. Thank you very much for taking an interest and giving me the chance to talk about myself and our business. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Edozo Property Podcast. To find out more about Edozo, please visit edozo.com or follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter. Links are in the show notes.